Bullshit.
It's the No BS Marketing Show. I'm Dave Mastovich, CEO of Massolutions, the world's only no bullshit marketing firm. Today we have a special guest, Clyde Horner of Vistage Chair from Las Vegas. He works with groups of chief executives, entrepreneurs, and small business owners to help them on leadership, structure, financial analysis, basically to help them grow 2x, 3x, 10x. He's going to bring some insights to us about how he helps other leaders and what's happened throughout his career. Clyde, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dave. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for including me.
Sure. You and I had the chance to meet through Vistage, and the loyal No BS listeners know that I'm all in on Vistage. It's helped me a lot with personal and professional growth. And then I became a Vistage workshop speaker about 3.5 years ago. Get the chance to go across the country and meet talented leaders and talented Vistage chairs like yourself. That's how we had the chance to meet. You brought me in. You had the confidence to bring the No BS platform to your groups. You know that I mentioned to you the first question is always the most difficult. In tongue in cheek, it's actually the easiest question because it's to ask the guests to tell us about their career path, their journey.
Well, that's a big question, and I've thought a lot about that over the last few years. Um, my career has been, when looking back, one miracle after another. I was raised by a small family in West Texas who had a scarcity mentality, and I didn't know what in the world I wanted to do. I was an athlete, and that's about all I did in high school, other than the one probably biggest thing I did was started dating my future wife when we were in sophomores in high school. And that's really probably all I had in mind. I didn't particularly care about grades. I wasn't thinking about the future. It was all sports and my future wife. And somehow, um, maybe because of my mother working part time, I figured out being an accountant or a CPA might be a good idea. My parents had never been to college, so I was going to be the first one. And somehow, which is probably a miracle, I found my way to college. And back in those days, we had IBM punch cards to enroll and find classes. And about halfway through my first semester of enrolling, not knowing what in the world I was going to do or what I was going to take, I lost all of my punch cards. And right in the middle of registering in the big room, and I was panic stricken. And my first thought was, well, I can go back to West Texas, and if nothing else happens, I can I can start over again, and who knows what I can do. So, with luck, I found the cards and got registered and went on my way and became a CPA. And that was a real trip. And today, I would suggest I'm a recovering CPA because I have no interest in any of that. Um, I was good at it. I passed the CPA exam, and something happened along the way. I think it was the melanoma I had removed in 1986, caused me to realize that there was more things in life than debits and credits and right and wrong and keeping secrets and catching people doing bad stuff. And I headed off in a totally different direction. And the interesting thing, although I was successful as what I was doing, I never saw myself as a leader. When I was growing up, JFK was the leader, Martin Luther King was the leader, and I didn't see myself in that same position. And so I worked hard, uh, climbed a bunch of ladders, uh, found my way, another miracle, from Houston after graduating at the University of Texas in Austin. I found my way to Las Vegas because of an old guy by the name of Howard Hughes. He bought the Desert Inn in Las Vegas in October of 1967. And I saw that possibility in the Houston office because Hughes Tool Company was one of our main audit clients in the Houston office. And they wanted somebody from the Houston office to come to Las Vegas to do the acquisition audit for the Desert Inn. And I ran around the office with my hand in the air, making as much noise as I could, and got chosen. And four of us came to Las Vegas, and two of us never went home. I never had any interest in going back to Houston. It was too hot, too humid, too crowded, too rainy. And Las Vegas was the climate that I'd been raised in while I was going to high school. And I was right where I wanted to be. And so I continued with the CPA firm for about 7 years, and then I became the CFO at the Dunes. And we were,
Whoa, hold on a second. So Clyde, you get there in 1967, did you say?
yes, it's a long time ago.
You've seen it from the infancy then to solid growth to the explosion that it is now.
And the implosion and the growth again. Yeah, when I came here, when Kay and I, my wife and I, and our 14-month-old son came to Las Vegas in early '68, actually, when we moved. Uh, Las Vegas was bigger, as big around as a nickel. You could drive across town in nothing flat, and you could most. I spent most of my time at the Desert Inn and the Sands. You may remember, and the Sands was known for Sammy Davis and Dean Martin and Red Skelton. You could walk around the lobby and the casino and see those people just standing around talking or playing 21 or
So wait, you actually have spoken or shook the hands of Sinatra and Sammy Davis
my
Jr., et cetera?
wife's claim to fame is yes, seeing those people. And I'm missing the name I want to tell you about, but yeah,
Laughlin?
no. Um, I'll think of it in a minute and I'll tell you. But it was just unbelievable compared to the way it is today. So giant, and you never see any celebrities because they're probably afraid to be out and about. But back then, it was nothing to see them in the coffee shop or standing around the front desk of the hotel. And it was just unbelievable. And it was so much fun for a 24-year-old at that time. And I had a chance to leave the CPA firm in 1973 and become the CFO at the Dunes because the Dunes was a client by that time. And I was 29 years old. And I thought that was a heck of an opportunity. And we were in trouble with the Dunes was in trouble with everybody, the SEC, the IRS, the FBI, Strike Force. I've got 500 pages of testimony at the SEC. I testified in a grand jury in Springfield, Massachusetts, and Las Vegas. And after 3.5 years of being an employee in that situation, I realized I was in the wrong place. And I went to another former client of our firm in Las Vegas, the Cashman organization, who owned the Caterpillar dealership and the Cadillac dealership. The Caterpillar dealership the was the entire state of Nevada, and the Cadillac dealership was for the entire city of Las Vegas, and that's the place where I realized how important having a monopoly is. There were no other Cadillac dealerships, there's no other heavy equipment dealerships in the state, and it was a fun place to learn. And I stayed there for the next 21 years and became a Vistage chair in 2001. And I've been doing this for 19 years, and it's been a real blast and a learning experience. That's what Vistage is. It's not a social organization. It's not a networking group. and it's not a political organization. It's all about learning, and that's what I am. I think I never really had any idea when I was in high school or college what I really wanted to ultimately be. I think I always wanted to compete and learn, and that's where I am. And I learned to be a leader. I learned that I was a leader along the way.
Clyde Clyde Horner, Vistage chair for the past 19, 20 years, just talking about his career path. Clyde, you said you're a leader. You've shown that in the meetings that I've been in with your groups. Talk to me about what you see has been the tenets of your leadership style. What were some of the things that you honed over the years and realized time and again, this is working for me? This is the Clyde Horner leadership style.
Well, um, I'll tell you, I didn't start out that way. The family that I was born into and raised by were serious introverts, and I became. That's all I need. My parents didn't have big conversations. We didn't talk about things that were had any depth. We were superficial, and so therefore my communication ability wasn't the greatest in the world, and I felt that I was safest when I was quiet. I think I was raised where I interpreted my parents to teach me that I was supposed to be seen, not heard. And so I didn't tell anybody anything. I didn't ask anybody anything. And I figured out I could figure out what the right thing to do was by myself. And by the time I figured it out, I would blurt it out and scare people to death. And not until um, in the 90s did I realize what was going on with me. And that's when I started shifting and becoming more, I don't want to say extroverted, but more communicative and being more open and candid and saying what I was thinking rather than just being quiet. I learned along the way that my comfort zone was behind the curtains, pulling all the ropes and levers, not being on center stage. I had no interest in being center stage. I could lead from behind rather than lead from out front. That's where my comfort zone was.
Interesting that you point out, Clyde, that you lead from the back and you've been able to successfully do that. And earlier you said you weren't matching up with some of the leadership heroes of that time, John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and others. Talk a little bit more about that because there's always been this myth of the charismatic leader. And there are certainly some great charismatic leaders, but there are an awful lot of leaders that don't lead with the charisma. They lead from behind. It doesn't mean they don't have charisma, it just means they lead more in a quiet manner. Talk a little bit about how that maybe initially held you back a little till people started opening their eyes and realizing, because I think that's sometimes what happens. That charismatic leader jumps out and people notice them more quickly, but that doesn't mean that they're getting anything done more than someone else.
Yeah, I think the charismatic comment is the word that I would use. I saw JFK and Martin Luther King doing that, and I never saw myself in that position because probably because of fear. You know, I could look bad or be wrong or made fun of, and so my most comfortable place was to listen to the CEO of the company that I was working for and figure out how to get everything done. And I could do that behind the scenes. I didn't have to be center stage. And that's the way it worked. And that was my comfort zone. And that's the way I was successful. Being in the Vistage uh, leadership role, it's a little different. I still have to be out on center stage leading groups of CEOs, most of whom are big drivers and extroverted, and I'm the opposite. So, what I learned was I could lead by asking valuable questions and helping them discover things rather than being charismatic and telling them what to do. So that's the primary way I lead these days is through questions. It's the Socratic leadership thing that we've learned over and over. You may have heard that. I think Gandhi led from behind too. I don't think he was a big charismatic leader, although I could be wrong about that.
Makes sense. And as you've said, we've learned over the years that you could have that Socratic leadership style and make a big impact. This show is about leadership and communication, but it's also the No BS show. And what we like to help our loyal No BSers with is giving examples of when someone is vulnerable. And they talk about when they were the BSer, when maybe their leadership wasn't what it needed to be. They were the tough boss, difficult employee, or maybe their communication wasn't as effective as it could have been because of something they were doing from a style or delivery standpoint. What is a time when you weren't the best leader or communicator? What did you learn from it that could help our audience?
Well, uh, it's an interesting question because uh, for the most part, up until I started maybe in the 90s, I was always a difficult employee because I didn't talk to anybody. In fact, in the 90s, when really started learning about feedback, I asked my employees what what they noticed I could change the most, and they said, You really need to start speaking to people." And that was really a shocker for me because I thought I was, and I argued with them for a long, long time, and they soon convinced me that I didn't speak to anybody. So I decided one day I'm going to walk down the hall. I'm going to speak to everybody. I'm going to call them by their first name if I know that, and if they've got a shirt on or a dress on that has their name, I'll use that name. And I started doing that, and I noticed, or it came aware to me that these people are really becoming friendly, and I thought they were changing. And the big thing was I realized soon that I was the one that changed, or was in the process of changing. So I could have always communicated better. I didn't know how to do it. I was afraid to do it. And these days, in Vistage groups, I see people exactly in the same situation. And one question I like to ask uh, new members is who taught you how to have a valuable conversation? And in 19 years, I've never had anybody really answer that question. Most of the time, they just sit and look at me like, "Wow, nobody." And and then they say, "Well, maybe my parents did." And I said, "Well, who taught them?" And they say, "Probably their parents." So the bottom line of that is, I think most of us as human beings are never taught how to have a valuable conversation. We don't know how to start it. We don't know how to navigate through the middle of it when we get in. We're good at creating arguments and blaming and disagreeing, and we don't know how to get out of it. And most of us don't know how to end a conversation with new agreements that can be tested along the way. So therefore, we either avoid conversations or we create an argument, and that's what I went through most of my life doing until I started learning who in the world I was and seeing how I could change.
Talk about the other side. Talk about some of your biggest communication successes. What are things that you used over the years again and again? Maybe it was the cadence or frequency of how you communicated. Maybe it was the format. It was a certain style of meeting. What were the things you talked about? The walking around at that one job, how it changed the game for you just by walking around and talking to people a couple of days a week. What are your most successful communication approaches?
Um, in the Vistage arena, I've I've uh, I've come to know several people that have a conversation model. Susan Scott, in 2000 or so, wrote a book called Fierce Conversations that helped me develop a model of a conversation, how to start it, how to end it. And Edgar Papke, who is one of my closest friends, who is a Vistage speaker, has a conversation model also that I'm really encouraging members to use and myself. And it's a real challenge because I have to stay with the model, and it's very easy to get away from it. It starts with an intention statement, and that's the intentions is, why are we sitting here or standing here talking to each other? Most of the time when we start a conversation, we go busting into somebody's office or our home with our spouse and say, we got a problem, we got to sit down and talk about this right now. It scares the other person to death, the walls go up, big guns come out, and we don't talk about anything important. And Edgar has helped me realize that every conversation, or important or valuable conversation, needs to start off with an intention statement, which is a relationship statement about, I'd like to spend the next 30 minutes having a conversation with you. So when we leave, you and I and our employees or our customers or clients can function at the highest level possible, or the highest level we've ever functioned before. And just get permission. Can we do that? And most people will say yes. And um, then I start off with my view of the world or whatever is going on and share my concerns and fears. And then I ask the person sitting across from me to do the same thing. And I don't interrupt them. I ask them not to interrupt me. Then we can, after we tell each other what's really going on and how we see things, we can come to some shared understandings, and just one or two. And then after we do that, we can come up with one or two solutions. And then after that, we come up with who's going to do what, the commitments from myself and the commitment from the other person. And finally, we agree to come back next week or 2 weeks from now and test what our new agreements are. And I found that that's the only way to have conversations, because otherwise, I'm just going to cause an argument. I'm going to blame the other person. I'm going to blame somebody. And then we're going to run out of time. And we're going to say, oh my goodness, I didn't realize it was so late. I've got another meeting. And we jump up and run away. And we don't know what we talked about or what we agreed to. So that's what I've learned, that I've got, and that's not the way I grew up and learned. I knew I was good at creating an argument and a destructive conversation rather than a valuable one. And that's what I've been really encouraging Vistage members and everybody I know over the last 5, 6, 10 years. And it's really hard for most of us to do. I've got to have a picture. I have to have a picture of it in front of me. Otherwise, I can fall for any kind of distraction.
How long ago did you start working to do this new way of conversing and using this system?
Well, I started in, let's say, 2001 when I became a chair. That's when I discovered Susan Scott's book, Fierce Conversations. Uh, was I good at it? No, because it didn't. It's a practice. I've just got to practice, and I don't like to practice. I just like to tell people what to do rather than get their view and converse about shared understandings. And then I met another fellow along the way that owned a company by the name of Conversant, and I started learning more from him about what a conversation was really about. And then lately, I've latched on to Edgar Papke's teaching that I just went over with you. So it's been an it's been a long journey of learning how to do this, and I'm still not there.
But you've seen the progress and the impact, and I think the biggest thing is you've made an intentional investment of time to make sure conversations are two-way and engaging, more open, more vulnerable, and less argumentative.
Yeah, it's a learning, and I like the word you used, intentional. It's got to be intentional. It's not haphazard. It's not winging it. many times I really encourage people to write out the intention statement in advance, write out what my view is and what my fears are and what my concerns are and what's getting in my way. I've really got to be intentional. And the other thing that's I think is on target here is I've had another Vistage speaker by the name of Balaji. His last name is too hard for me to pronounce. Anyhow, he talks about 3 levels of integrity. The lowest level he talks about is telling the truth. And most of us, or I guess I thought that's what integrity was about. The second level up the ladder is doing what I say I'm going to do. And I could understand that. And the highest level of integrity, the highest rung on the integrity ladder, is saying what I'm thinking. And that was the hardest thing for me to learn. And saying what I'm thinking is not attack. It's not a personal attack of you or anybody. It's not telling people how stupid they are or how overweight they are or this, that, or other. It's what I'm thinking about ideology, strategy, direction, culture, and that we can do when we start off with the right relationship statement or the intention statement. So that's the progress, and I had no clue to that for most of my life.
Powerful conversations, powerful approach. I love the 3 levels of integrity, and it does sound, when you first hear it, you're like, whoa, the lowest level is telling the truth. I know some people that struggle with that. Then the second level, doing what I say I'm going to do. I know a lot of people that struggle with that, including myself from time to time. And the third level, saying what I'm thinking, but in a confrontational manner as opposed to confrontational. I like it.
Absolutely. Uh, Edgar Papke, I spent several days with over the last 3 months, and he says something that really is interesting. I don't know how to prove it. He said research shows that we as human beings lie 90, that's 90 times a day. And I don't know whether that's perfectly true or not. And I think it may be. It's not that we intentionally lie, but we lie by omission, we lie by withholding, and we lie because we're stating our beliefs or thoughts rather than facts. And that really gets in the way of progress.
More so today than ever before.
Yeah, and I guess now that I tell you that, the thing that I've been talking to many associates lately and my wife is today when I turn on the TV or the internet or the telephone or my phone, uh, the chances of somebody on the other end telling me the truth is very low. They are telling me their beliefs or their agenda, and it's a scary time for knowing the truth.
Agreed. That was Clyde Horner, Vistage Chair from Las Vegas, with great insights on leadership and communication here on the No BS Marketing Show. Remember, sign up for your weekly No BS marketing fix at massolutions.biz and ask yourself, what's the big idea? And build your story around the answer. It's all about bold solutions, no BS.